Hey, Slick. Look what you got yourself into now. Everything's over for you, Will. You're done. It's time for you to face reality. Your dad doesn't love you. Your mom doesn't know who you are. You're facing theft charges, assault. You don't come back from this. Don't you get it? There's no hope for you. Got something for you, Slick. Hello?
Will, why haven't you answered my call? Mom just vanished. Mom's gone, Will. She's gone.
What?
I need you to help me find her.
Mom, this is our old house. Come on, I'll take you back home.
You took your first steps in this house. Will.
Huh?
You seem tortured, Will. What is it? We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places.
There was a point in my life when I had to stop caring what my old man thought about me.
I need you here. I need the help. Your mom needs you.
Let's be honest, your mom is a fading light.
Whatever this treatment is, it's only delaying the inevitable.
Taking money from his own son like this? That money is rightfully yours.
This is for your mom.
Your dad doesn't love you.
Just can't right now with work.
I hate
Your
you!
mom doesn't know who you are.
We're a family, Will. It's gonna pass.
You don't come back from this.
You can always
I gave
come
you a chance,
home.
taught you things. Just a stupid kid.
You never have to prove yourself.
There's no hope for you. I know what you're going through.
I love you, no matter what.
Trust me, I'm your friend. Well, good to see you. Just couldn't stay away, could you?
I know what you are.
Oh, you do? What might that be?
You were a liar and you were a thief.
Oh, that's pretty rich coming from you. You still don't get it. I'm you.
No, you're not.
I'm a reflection, Will. I reveal you for who you really are.
I thought you were my friend.
I am.
No, you're not. You tricked me. You manipulated me.
Sometimes it takes making the hard decisions to show someone what they're really capable of.
You ruined everything.
I tried to help.
Get out of my life!
So typically when I find a good bottle that I want to keep or sell, I figure out the best way to clean it. Now there are several different methods, but I found one that I use that works very well. So you fill the bottle a little bit with water, you take the brush, scrub the inside, and then after you scrub the inside, you take a shotgun shell, cut it open, and pour some of the BBs inside. And then just shake it up. Now, depending on how old the bottle is, it may be difficult to get all the dirt out. Sometimes there's even old growth and plant life inside. But if you put in the time and effort, then it should come out looking brand new.
One of the things I find so interesting at the start of this episode is Will laying in the pit. Then we see Darby peeking over and saying, "How could you?" Now we know that Darby was a part of the process of helping lead him into the point that got him to that pit, all the decisions that led up to that point, even putting a bottle into his hand and saying, "Take care of this." And now he's been pushed back into a pit. He's laying there looking up. That's all he can do. And he sees Darby saying, "How could you? I can't believe you would do something like this." And I think that's what happens for all of us, is that Satan is constantly trying to lead us a certain direction and say, hey, you need to do this. Go ahead and take this, act like this, say this, whatever it might be, all these different things. He says, it's not going to be that big of a deal. Just do it. You'll get what you want out of this. But then when we do it, we don't get what we want, and we find ourselves in a bad place, and then he says, how could you? How dare you? I can't believe you would do something like this. I think he uses that a lot for us as Christians, as he says, you call yourself a Christian? How could you do something like that? And what happens is it causes us to begin to hide. It causes us to pull away, just like it did in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve from the very beginning. When they sinned, they hid from God. That's what happens to all of us. But there's something really important that happened, is that when Will finally sees his mom and finds his mom, his perspective starts to shift because she begins to tell him the scripture and quote scripture from Ephesians chapter 6 that tells him we are not in a flesh and blood battle. It is a spiritual battle, and everything begins to turn in his mind. We see this in Psalm chapter 32, what happens when we begin to understand this picture of sin and even what happens to us before we confess our sin. It says this, verse 1, it says, oh, what joy for those whose disobedience is forgiven, whose sin is put out of sight. Yes, what joy for those whose record the Lord has cleared of guilt, whose lives are lived in complete honesty. When I refused to confess my sin, my body wasted away, and I groaned all day long. Day and night your hand of discipline was heavy on me. My strength evaporated like water in the summer heat. You ever been living in sin and you felt that way, like your strength was evaporated, like you were carrying a lot of weight? This is what he talks about. But then David says this in Psalm 32. He says, finally, I confessed all my sins to you and stopped trying to hide my guilt. I said to myself, I will confess my rebellion to the Lord, and you forgave me. All my guilt is gone. He says, when I was living in sin, when I refused to confess that, I felt the weight of the guilt. But when I confessed my sin to you, you forgave me. And all my guilt was gone. All my shame was gone. I felt all of a sudden free. And it's amazing what happens when we confess our sin to the Lord, when we recognize there's a spiritual battle, that we're being led the wrong direction, that we're following the wrong voice, but we say, you know what, I'm not going to follow that voice anymore. God, I'm turning to you, and I'm coming to you as somebody who's made mistakes, so I confess my sin to you, and what happens is he doesn't say, how could you, how dare you? He says, welcome home. He says, I love you. No matter what you've done, don't allow your sin to pull you away from God. Take your sin to him, confess your sin to him, and experience the freedom that comes from forgiveness.